Hi, this is Matt Connors, and what I'm recording now, I'm using a 3D program called Silo. So Silo's been around for many years, and what I really like about it is that it's very simple to use. It's pretty straightforward. I'm going to go ahead and just make a simple cube. What's nice about Silo is it's not a very cluttered interface. It's got a kit of editing basic primitives or any kind of polygon that you might make. Bevel, break, cut, all of this exists right here in the main interface. I tend to use a lot of the keyboard shortcuts because I learned them over time. Like Q is kind of a universal manipulator that allows you to make changes pretty quickly, whether it's changing the scale or dimension. And you can also get right into the direct editing tools by selecting a point. This is point selection is A, I want to say. Face selection is D, and then S is allowing you to select edges. It's really nice. You can double click and you would select a loop. If you needed to cut faces, it's pretty straightforward to do. I'm just selecting all of those. I'm hitting Shift and then X, but you can access a lot of these directly through the Modify menu. But what I'm going to show more is how you can potentially use this. So what I really like about Silo is you can take a very simple shape like this and start to make pretty quick modifications and make it a little bit more interesting. You can then edit any of these faces, right? What I like to use it for is create visualizations of how 3D objects sit together with one another. I began my career as an illustrator, and I still like to make illustrations. Oftentimes, the 3D part of it is the most challenging to understand how something exists in perspective. If I were making a building or a milk cart, and it doesn't really matter, like what would you start with? So, let's say if you were, if I was making a building, obviously I wouldn't want to pull it that high, but I might want to take these two faces, and then I'm hitting the Z key to extrude. So I have a natural extrusion here. If I wanted it to be something, and this is kind of great for making just a simple structure of like a blocky city. I could then pull this out, and now I've got my kind of starter kit for some buildings if I wanted to make them. If you extrude again, I can then take this face and move it down, and then I have what could be the start of a wall, something. Anyway, let me just go ahead and delete that. I want to show you a scene that I started to build, which is pretty straightforward. I just took a square and then I made the top face a little bit smaller, and then I started to add extra dimension into it. As I kind of described, you can select edges and then you can cut those edges if you want to create a little bit more detail. Selecting all these edges, and then I'm hitting cut. And now it's cut right in the middle. I added a base by basically using the bottom section here and then just extruding. I think what I did is I took something like this, these faces, selected them all together, and then I hit Command Cut. Whoops. And then I created an extrusion. And then I further extruded a little bit down here. What I like too is, I think I have the scene lights turned on. You can make very simple light structures. Go ahead and turn on the light to give you a sense of how it might look in a rendered program. You can use the scene lights. So it's just a very simple fill light from the front. I can change the rotation. Now, most 3D packages are going to have pretty complex lighting. The lighting is simplified within Silo. That's something you do need to realize, and also the way it handles textures. You can apply textures, and I actually have a few very simple textures. Well, they're really shaders. They're diffuse shaders, and then I have a more complex texture to show you how. Let's see. Let me turn on that plane. That I had taken what I started to create in Silo, and then I just made a very simple screenshot render, and and then I rendered it again in the package that they have for rendering. Never Center, which is a company that makes Silo, they make a render package called Milo. So if you buy Silo, it's included, and then you can just open up Silo models automatically in Milo and make renders. Now this render back here was not made exclusively with Milo. I took it into Viscom, which is a AI assisted 2D and 3D visualization tool. But and it created a lot of these little details that you had in here, but it started from what I had created. And this is just a generic like polygonal model of a man, which I gave a little bit of kind of a blue suit and blue hair, and that was used to generate this figure that you see here. And then of course I just modified him just a little bit in Photoshop. But something like this is probably, I don't know, 20 minutes to create with just these simple shapes within Silo, which I love to make these kind of fast edits in Silo. It's a great program for that. And the fact that the interface is so uncluttered means that, and I'm not doing a whole lot to these models. I can, make very simple extrusions. I think I made this kind of column just by taking the face, cutting, pasting, and then I selected the face again and I extruded. Whoops. Silo's telling me that I don't have the face selected. So I'm going to go ahead. Oh, there we go. So it does an automatic local move, which just means that it's reproducing this front face along with the side faces to make it more of a cube, an irregular cube. So that's a nice way to add some detail. And I'll leave that the way it is. I'm going to go ahead and hit F to then select by object. Maybe I will add a little bit of dimension to it. I didn't want to do that. Just move this in a little bit, give it a little bit of character. And I'm going to do the same thing with these. Now, I do have a very simple shader applied, like a silver. And I'll go ahead and grab each of these. And there is the potential to turn on a numerical editor, which gives you much more control over rotation, actual rotation, and the movement in 3D space. I'm not being very specific on this, but if we wanted to, we could have a very clear idea. Now, I have no back face on this piece right here, on this pillar, and I don't have it on this one either. But if I wanted to, it would be fairly easy to go ahead and complete that with a bridge, which I'm just bridging these two faces, Shift B, and then I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to select this and Shift B. Now, if I add a new face like that, I do need to then apply a texture again. So the nice thing about Milo is I could then re-render at a different angle and create a whole new illustration that's different from what I had already made here. But I kind of like this way of just making a quick 3D scene and then create a render. Anyway, that's a little bit on Silo, or Silo, I guess people pronounce it differently. Maybe I'll go into a little bit more detail in a future vid if you like this one. And one more thing I want to describe is what I find to be a lot of fun is the editing. If you wanted to, let's say, make a little bit more detail onto an edge like this, in a lot of programs, you would have access to this as well. You just, in this case, you hit the B key. It's going to give you a default bevel amount, and I can change that a little bit. So that gives me a little bit more dimension on the edges, makes it more realistic. And it also catches the light a little bit better. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing over here. And you do need to keep in mind, if I have a connected edge like this and I bevel, I'm going to create an extra polygon that I probably don't want on this edge. So maybe I'll go ahead and break this. And maybe I'll do that later. Anyway, I should have left this as a separate object because it's connected. If I bevel this edge, it's going to create an extra poly or an extra poly face right in here, which I don't really want at this time. So maybe I'll disconnect that and come back to it. All right, that's just a test of Silo showing how it works.